Maria Goretti was born on October 16th, 1890 in Corinaldo, a hill town in the province of Ancona, Italy, to Luigi Goretti and Ansunda Carlini, both devout Catholic peasants. She was the third child of seven children. The family lived in poverty but maintained strong Christian values. In 1896, the family moved to Col Gianturco near Pagliano and later to Fiere di Conca in the Latina province to seek better economic opportunities. In Fiere, the Gorettis shared a house with the Serenili family, specifically Giovanni Serini and his son Alessandro, who later played a central role in Maria's life and martyrdom. In 1900, tragedy struck when Luigi Goretti passed away of malaria, placing the family in dire straits and forcing Maria's mother to work in the fields to support the children, with Maria taking care of the household and her younger siblings. Maria grew up imbued with deep piety and devotion to the Virgin Mary. She longed to receive Holy Communion and was permitted to do so at the age of 11, a significant spiritual milestone at the time, given the Church's discipline regarding the Eucharist. Her personality was noted for modesty, obedience, and a forgiving nature. She had no formal education and remained illiterate, but was taught the catechism orally and had a deep understanding of her faith. On July 5th, 1902, while alone in the house, Alessandro Seralini, then 20 years old, attempted to assault Maria, who was 11 years old and 9 months at the time. She resisted fiercely, declaring it would be a sin and preferring passing away to submission. In response, Alessandro stabbed her 14 times with a file, and she was discovered gravely wounded and taken to the hospital in Nettuno. While in agony, Maria underwent surgery without anesthesia and survived about 20 hours. During this time, she reportedly forgave Alessandro, saying, "I forgive him. I want him to go to heaven." She passed away on July 6, 1902, shortly after receiving the last rites. She was buried in the Church of Our Lady of Grace in Nettuno, which later became a pilgrimage site. Alessandro was arrested and tried in 1903, and due to his age, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison instead of life sentence. Initially unrepentant, he later claimed that Maria appeared to him in a dream, surrounded by lilies, and inspired a profound spiritual conversion. After 27 years, he was released in 1929, sought forgiveness from Maria's mother, which she granted during a Christmas Eve reconciliation. Alessandro later joined the Order of Friars Minor Capuchin as a lay brother and lived in a monastery until his passing in 1970. The cause for Maria's canonization was introduced formally in the 1930s. On April 27, 1947, Pope Pius XII declared Maria Goretti blessed at the St. Peter's Basilica in the presence of a large crowd, including her mother, then 82 years old, making her the first mother to witness her child's beatification. On June  24, 1950, Maria was canonized as a saint and again by Pope Pius XII before a crowd of over 500,000, including Alessandro Serenini. She became one of the youngest officially recognized saints in the Catholic Church and was proclaimed the patron saint of youth, young women, purity, rape victims, and forgiveness. Maria's remains were placed under high altar at the Basilica of Santa Maria del Grazie in Nettuno, which became a shrine. Her feast day is observed July 6th in the Roman Catholic liturgical calendar. Numerous churches, schools, and institutions across the world have been named in her honor. Her story has inspired literature, theater, and film, notably the 1947 Italian film Heaven Over the Marshes, and in 2003, the dramatization of Maria Goretti, starring Martina Pinto. Pope John Paul II and Pope Benedict XVI both cited Maria Goretti as an example of Christian purity and forgiveness. Her story continues to this day to resonate in discussions of Christian response to violence, the dignity of the human person, and chastity. Her canonization was notable as the first in modern history, attended by the victim's parents and the perpetrator of the crime. Saint Maria Goretti is often portrayed with a unique combination of symbols that emphasize her martyrdom, purity, youth, and forgiveness. Her attributes are specific and distinct within Christian iconographic traditions, often reflecting both her tragic passion and her saintly virtues. The white lily is her most prominent iconographic symbol, representing virginity, innocence, and spiritual purity. She's frequently depicted holding lilies and or surrounded by them. In some depictions, the lilies bloom from her hands, indicating purity preserved through suffering. She's also traditionally shown holding a palm frond, the ancient Christian symbol of martyrdom and triumph over death, signifying her passion for her faith and virtue. She also may be shown with rosary beads occasionally, symbolizing her deep personal piety and devotion to Our Lady, as frequently played to her in her short life. She's often as well shown surrounded by a halo representing her sainthood and sometimes a crown of 12 stars, alluding to the woman clothed by the sun. From Revelations, drawn symbolic connections to the Virgin Mary and the Church triumphant. She's frequently as well dressed in simple peasant attire, usually red for martyrdom or white for purity, often barefoot, symbolizing both her humility and her earthly poverty. Some visual interpretations include visible wounds on her chest or side, or a dagger or file, referencing the instrument used on her attack. This is rare in Western iconography, but appears more commonly in devotional art focused on the graphic aspects of her martyrdom. There have been numerous artworks depicting Maria Goretti. La Martyre della Purezza, a statue made in 1950s and found in Nettuno, Italy. This is created shortly after her canonization. The statue is at the Basilica Santa Maria del Grazie, which presents her holding lilies and a palm, and dressed in a peasant's dress barefoot. The statue is placed beside her tomb under the altar. There's also stained glass in the St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican. A stained glass window installed near the time of her canonization in the 1950s depicts Maria being crowned by angels, surrounded by floral motifs, and holding the martyr's palm. There's also an icon by Sir Marie Paul Farran in Jerusalem. This modern icon created by Benedictine nun Sir Marie Paul in the Byzantine style shows Maria Goretti holding lilies and a palm set against a golden background. It is popular in Eastern Catholic contexts and is used for veneration in shrine chapels. There's also the Maria Goretti's Forgiveness by Franco Vignazia in 1953. This is a fresco painted in a church in southern Italy, which depicts her vision of appearing to Alessandro in prison, offering him lilies. The work emphasizes her sanctity through forgiveness, a less common theme in visual art. Finally, there's the bronze doors at the Nuoto Basilica, made by Giacomo Manzu in the 1950s. These massive bronze doors feature reliefs depicting scenes from Maria's life, including her resisting Alessandro, her martyrdom, and her heavenly glorification, blending classical and modern techniques. There's also many modern liturgical and popular images of Saint Maria Goretti. Notably, there are holy cards, especially those distributed post canonization in the 1950s, typically portray her in serene countryside settings, sometimes with a staircase to heaven in the background or angelic figures emphasizing her youth and path to sainthood. There are also professional banners from Italian dioceses often depict her carrying a lily in one hand and a crucifix in the other, set in front of a sunburst signifying the light of faith. In Latin America and Filipino devotional art, she sometimes is paired with Saint Agnes or Saint Filomena, portrayed in youthful unity as symbols of chastity. While not traditionally a visual art, the 1947 Italian film Heaven Over the Marshes, or Cielo sulla Palude, directed by Augusto Geneva, visually codified many of her iconographic motifs: humble setting, luminous innocence, and symbolic floral imagery. The aesthetic of the film influenced several post war devotional artworks. There's also the 2003 TV movie Maria Goretti, starring Martina Pinto, which presents more naturalistic portrayals but visually reinforces symbols like light, lilies, and sacrifice, aligning with contemporary visual devotional standards. In the Saint Maria Goretti parish churches, particularly those built in post canonization decades, so from the 1950s to 1970s, feature murals and mosaics of her welcoming children, holding lilies, or standing beneath a cross. In Canada, the Saint Maria Goretti parish in Toronto features a large mosaic with stylized lilies in red and gold. There are also many shrines dedicated to purity in Italy, Spain, and Brazil, which include statues modeled on her likeness from Beatification era holy cards, often marked with serene facial expressions and a gentle hand gestures. The canonization of Saint Maria Goretti followed the traditional path of verifying authenticated miracles as evidence of sanctity. These miracles were subject to rigorous medical and theological examination by the Congress of Rites, the Vatican body responsible for such inquiries prior to the reform of Vatican II. The healing miracles attributed to her took place in the decades after her passing and were formally investigated in the lead up to her beatification in 1947 and canonization in 1950. There was first and foremost the healing of Sister Maria Teresa Carnini in 1933 in Rome, Italy. The Sister Maria Teresa Carnini of the Congregation of Sisters of the Sacred Heart suffered from tuberculosis of the bones or osteitis, particularly affecting her knee, causing her immense pain and immobility. The disease had advanced despite prolonged medical treatment. In 1933, Sister Maria Teresa prayed for Maria Goretti's intercession, often learning about the saint's learning about the saint's martyrdom. One night after a novena, she reportedly dreamt of Maria appearing to her. Upon waking, she discovered that the swelling and pain had vanished, and she could walk unaided for the first time in months. Medical experts, including physicians from the San Giovanni Hospital, confirmed the sudden and complete remission as inexplicable. The miracle was approved for inclusion in the beatification caused by the Church. Then there was the healing of Alessandro Rapiziani in the mid 1940s in Milan, Italy. Alessandro was a young factory worker. After an industrial accident that had left him crushed with a vertebrae resulted in paralysis, doctors declared the damage irreversible. In the mid 1940s, he attended a pilgrimage to the Basilica of Saint Maria del Grazie in Nettuno, where Maria Goretti's remains lie. During a Mass in her honor, he prayed silently for her intercession. He suddenly felt a burning sensation in his spine and began to regain sensation over and in his lower limbs. He stood and walked out the church unaided. Subsequent x rays showed inexplicable structural improvements. This cure was the final miracle accepted for her canonization process by the Catholic Church. Then there was the healing of Maria Concetta di Lieto in 1948 in Naples, Italy. Maria was a 27-year-old seamstress with advanced peritonitis due to a ruptured appendix, which was accompanied by septicemia and internal hemorrhaging. Doctors had ceased all curative efforts. In 1948, her family placed a relic of Maria Goretti near her hospital bed. A prayer group formed to ask for her intercession. That night, Maria Concetta reportedly saw a young girl in white standing at the foot of her bed. The following morning, her fever had dropped and signs of infection had begun to recede. Her full recovery was declared scientifically unexplainable by an ecclesiastical medical board in 1949. This miracle was proven as pivotal in the decision to canonize her the following year by the Catholic Church. Finally, there was the healing of Private Giuseppe Panozio in 1946 in Bari, Italy. Private Giuseppe Panozio, from the Italian Army veteran, had post traumatic osteomyelitis in his leg, which caused which was caused by shrapnel injury during World War II, which led to a long-standing infection and threat of amputation. After hearing a radio broadcast about Maria Goretti's story, he visited Nettuno shrine and prayed frequently. The next morning, he drained the drainage from his leg ceased and he could walk with minimal discomfort. The surgeons who had originally planned for the amputation postponed and later canceled it. There were no signs of infections that reappeared later on. This healing was documented but not advanced to the final phase of approved miracles. However, it did contribute to popular veneration. Since her canonization, numerous unofficial miracles and graces have been reported by devotees from various countries, including Brazil, the Philippines, Poland, and Canada. While not investigated formally by the Vatican, many are catalogued in devotional publications and local parish archives. These often involve physical healings, conversions, and protection from danger, all requested through prayer and contact with her relics. Following her passing in 1902, Maria Goretti's reputation for holiness began to spread rapidly throughout Italy. Her story centered on her defense of chastity and forgiveness of her killer resonated deeply with both clergy and laity. Within a few years, she was widely regarded as a martyr of purity, and spontaneous devotion began at her grave in Nettuno. Although popular piety grew quickly, formal steps towards her recognition as a saint were not taken until decades later due to lengthy procedures required by the church at the time of for causes of sainthood, particularly those involving child martyrs. Preliminary interest began informally around 1910, but the official introduction of her cause came in 1935 under Pope Pius XI. Postulator appointed was Monsignor Giovanni Palatucci, a diocesan priest who was named to oversee the cause. She was formally declared a servant of God, a first step in the canonization process. The Vatican sought to establish whether her passing constituted true martyrdom, which required proof that she was unalived in defensum castitatis, or in defense of chastity, a recognized form of Christian martyrdom. The Diocese of Albano, which includes Nettuno, conducted a local inquiry. There were over 40 witnesses that were interviewed for the various processes involved in canonization. This included Assunta Goretti, Maria's mother, Alessandro Sereni, her attacker, by then a lay brother, her siblings and neighbors, as well as medical personnel who treated her during her passing. The tribunal collected also medical documentation, autopsy reports, and extensive testimonials regarding Mary's virtues, final forgiveness, and the nature of the attack. In 1942, the Congregation of Rights ruled that Maria Goretti had indeed passed away as a martyr in defense of Christian virtue and had demonstrated heroic virtue through her action. The decree was approved by Pope Paul XII on March 25, 1947, permitted the Church to move towards beatification without requiring the usual two medically verified miracles, as martyrs require only one miracle for canonization. Pope Pius XII led the beatification in St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City. This process was attended by Assunta Goretti, then age 82, marking the first time in Church's history that a mother witnessed her child's beatification. A large crowd of pilgrims came from Italy, France, and Spain, including many members of Catholic youth organizations. There was also a declaration of Blessed Maria Goretti in this particular procedure. A cultus was also formally approved, allowing her to be publicly venerated, and a feast day observations approved. Though martyrdom was already established, the Church still pursued documentation of at least one miracle for canonization as required under the then current norms. A medico legal panel of the Congregation of Rights examined several healings attributed to Maria's intercession. These were drawn from a variety of geographic regions and socioeconomic contexts, reflecting her growing global venerations. Expert panels in her the expert panels concluded that the chosen cast met the criteria for being instantaneous, complete, and lasting with no medical explanation. The final approval of the miracle was given in 1949, setting the stage for canonization. The canonization was set by Pope Pius XII, and over 500,000 people, which was one of the largest gatherings for a canonization in history at the time. It was held at St. Peter's Square and not inside the basilica due to the size of the crowd. Alessandro Seralini, her former attacker, attended the ceremony discreetly as a lay Franciscan. This was also the first canonization that was held outdoors due to post war popularity and growing Catholic interest in saints as a role model for modern challenges. The Pope delivered a lengthy homily emphasizing Maria's virtues of purity, forgiveness, and strength of will, particularly addressed to young people and families. The 6th of July was officially recognized as her feast day, and she was given the official title of Virgin and Martyr. She was declared patron saint of young women and girls, victims of rape, purity movements, and Catholic youth. Her feast day was inserted into Roman Missal and Breviary, allowing her veneration worldwide. Pope Paul John II, during a 1985 address to youth, reaffirmed her significance as a modern saint who teaches the heroic value of chastity. In 2003, during the centennial of her passing, the Vatican issued a commemorative reflection, and pilgrims to Nettuno increased. Her story became a fixture in catechism for First Communion and confirmation preparation, especially in Italy, Latin America, and Filipino context.